a painting of some
A wine
vino.
bottle?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the kitchen.
That's what I thought. Okay.
There's
All right.
someone in the meeting that has the phone number 8127-4202-114. Can you hear me? Yeah, there's no microphone showing, so you're not gonna be able to speak.
Why don't you suggest to him that he call in on the phone and we can hear him?
Well, you just did that.
So he must be muted. He's got to
The
unmute his
microphone
phone.
showing up. He can't even mute or unmute. It's not showing a microphone.
I think he dropped off.
Just try and keep him from not seeing anything sort of.
Yeah, the iPad 3 is just still trying to connect. Maybe it's better, Ray, if I just remove and maybe that'll allow him to try to hook in again.
If you remove him, he can't come back in, remember? That's the problem. If you remove him, I did that by accident in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, thinking that it would get rid of background noise. But once you
Really?
remove him, he's banned from the meeting.
Huh. Didn't know.
Yeah, so.
All right, so here, 812-742-2114, giving it another crack at it.
Yeah, I'm just waiting a couple minutes, everybody, because we have a few people still trying to get connected. So
Hey, look at that. iPad 3 is in. They're now muted. So
can you
iPad,
unmute
I did.
iPad 3? I think that's Joe.
Yep, I did. It's a little bit of a delay.
I thought the number that he just said, that's actually our meeting ID number.
That is our meeting ID number. So they're hooking in probably through the internet, and that's their name. I guess maybe they don't have a default name, and Zoom puts that there maybe.
If they know what our number is, they can set their account to display whatever name they want.
Yeah, so they're displaying that. iPad 3 must be muting themselves because the unmute won't take.
Yeah, I sent a private message to identify, and I don't have a response. So I don't know who that is.
Now,
Well,
yeah.
people, I mean, to talk, you have to identify yourself, give your address, but you could be anonymous. You could have someone sitting in the room and you don't know who they are. So,
No, I know. We think it's Joe Fiamma. That's why.
That's why we're trying.
oh,
Yeah, because last time he was using an iPad.
I get it. Okay.
Okay, well, I think we have everybody that we're going to have at this point. Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? Susanna, you want to read the sunshine?
This is the regular meeting of the Land Use Board of the Township of Greenwich. Adequate notice of this meeting has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, and that a notice was published in the Star Gazette and Express Times newspaper. Notice was posted on the municipal bulletin board in the Township Administration Building in Greenwich Township, New Jersey. A notice was filed with the Township Clerk. So now I'll read the Greenwich Township virtual meeting rules and procedures. So number 1, Zoom waiting room will be turned on upon entry. All participants will enter through a virtual waiting room. The board secretary will be the meeting moderator and will admit each individual. Please use your first and last name as your username. The board secretary will not admit anyone using an inappropriate pseudonym screen name. Note, if joining the meeting after it has started, there may be a delay being admitted since the moderator will be handling multiple tasks. Please be patient. Number 2, to prevent background noise and ensure clear audio, most participants will remain muted during the meeting. To be recognized by the chairperson to speak, use the raise hand option located in the participants dialog box. The chairperson and moderators will unmute as needed. You can mute yourself, but you cannot unmute yourself. If you mute yourself, you will need to use the raise hand option again to alert the chairperson that you wish to be unmuted. Number 3, you are encouraged to use your device's camera and provide a video feed for the best meeting experience. Number 4, Greenwich Township reserves the right to remove any participants that are deemed to be disrupting the meeting. This includes any inappropriate audio or video. Anyone removed from the meeting will not be readmitted. Number 5, in the event the meeting has technical difficulties and ends abnormally, we will attempt to restart the meeting. All required participants should try to reconnect using their original meeting link. All optional participants may also attempt to reconnect if within 20 minutes of the meeting ending abnormally, a reset is not successful, the meeting will be ended and rescheduled. If necessary, information concerning rescheduling will be posted on the Township website, www.greenwichtownship.org. Number 6, for more information on how to use Zoom, visit www.zoom.com.
Okay. Very good. Kara, can you hear me?
It's got to be unmuted.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to unmute Kara, and I think anyone that she is going to have speak on her behalf.
Do a roll call.
Roll
right?
call.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead. Go ahead, Susanna, roll call.
Paul Beam, Class 1.
Here.
Joseph Chisello, Class 2.
Here.
Frank Marchetta, Class 3.
Here,
Ray Buckwalter, Class 4.
Here.
Bruce Williams, Class 4.
Here.
Kathy Colin, Class 4.
Here.
Don Marie Condas, Class 4.
Here.
Mark Scuderi, Class 4.
he's here, muted himself. I'm gonna unmute him. He's waving.
He's raising his hand.
I'm
There you go.
There
You
we
can
go.
talk
there we
now,
go.
Mark.
Joseph Fiamma, alternate 1.
We don't know. Right now, we don't have an affirmative statement that he's here, so for now, he's absent. Joe, if you hear us and you're iPad 3, call Ray or call Frank or somebody.
Jeremy Blunt, alternate 2.
Here.
Bill Cognac, alternate 3 is excused, and Pam Peslis, alternate 4 is excused.
How about Gary Hill?
I was waiting for that.
Gary Hill.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Is that Joe
Joe?
Fiamma?
I heard a voice.
Still muted.
Sounded like Joe.
Sounded like him, but
That's an applicant.
all right, Ray.
Okay,
we're ready.
we're good to go. So the next thing, are there any comments on the May 14th minutes that were distributed?
You need a motion to excuse Bill Cognac and decide what you want to do, if anything, about Joe Fiamma not being here.
Joe's
Why do we
calling
need a
right now.
motion when somebody's not here? We've just always said that they're,
Hey, Joe,
excused.
you having trouble connecting?
Yeah, I'm here. My picture's on here, but I just.
Ray, to have them
I got
formally
everybody in.
excused, you got to make the motion, and you can do a voice vote. But if they want to be recorded as an excused absence, you got to make a motion. That's what the statute says.
oh, we haven't done that in
So
15
something-
years, but we'll do it
Yeah.
tonight.
Now you have.
So I need a motion to excuse Pam Peslis and Bill Kenyak.
Make the motion.
Don, okay.
I'll make that motion. Bruce?
Second, right, Bruce?
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
We do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
You gotta start your video.
Abstain? Are we recording, Frank?
No.
I don't know if we have to. I'm just,
It says yes in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. It
Oh.
says you're recording.
So
Yeah, I'm
Susanna,
recording
did
as
you
well.
start it? You just start recording?
I started when we began, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
so
perfect.
I got Joe Fiamma on the line, just trying to get him hooked in. Joe, can you try to talk? It looks like you're unmuted. Talk.
Yeah, I unmuted. Am I okay now?
Yep.
okay,
Yeah,
you're good,
hang
Joe.
up,
Okay.
The only thing you gotta do now, Joe, if you want, start your video.
Start
Frank,
my video.
if he doesn't want us to see him, that's okay. He just has to see the witnesses
Just
testify.
rename iPad 3 to Joe Fiamma and we're good to go. So we know who, when he lights up, we know who's speaking.
He got knocked off.
We just lost him.
Oh.
Come back.
Okay. So we can go ahead and I'll ask any comments on the May
Try to
14th.
sign in again.
minutes? Does
No
anyone have any
comment.
comments, questions, suggestions?
No.
Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve them.
I can't hear you.
Make the motion.
A motion.
Okay, so Dawn has the motion, and I think Gary has the second.
Correct.
That work?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay,
How-
yeah,
how many
Mark
abstentions?
Scuderi is abstaining. Everyone else voted in favor of approving the minutes. Is that correct? Jeremy, you were a little late on raising your hand. That's why I'm asking.
I approve. I was slow.
Okay,
I
we're good then.
apologize.
You gotta actually-
Motion carries.
Your name.
The next thing on the
Not going
agenda,
by your Phone, try to go in by your phone.
the next thing on the agenda is, Kara,
to-
your group,
to
the
the
application
website,
for
the phone
certification
number.
of pre-existing non-conforming use. We're talking about
Yeah, there's a
551 and 555.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Try to call in.
I know I needed to be unmuted by the host. I don't know if my client, Marcin, who's muted right now, needed to be as well before we get started. Oh, there we go. We're good. Okay.
Real quick, Kara, sorry to interrupt, but Ray, I'm going to recuse myself from this portion of the meeting, so I'm going to step out.
Okay, Mark, good call.
You go to the website by your phone, you go click on the link in your phone. All right. You go there through your phone though. Yeah.
Okay, Kara, I think you can proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Kara Kaczynski of the law firm of McNally, Yarrows, Kaczynski, and Lime, here tonight with regard to 551 to 555 North Main Street. Thank you for having us back here, and we are here tonight in order to provide proof that there were in fact 4 units in the main building on the property prior to 1977. We have proof and testimony tonight that we submit will satisfy your concerns and will enable you to grant the application that's before you. So unless anyone has any preliminary questions, I'd like to call back my witness and one of the applicants, Marcin Koser.
I have one question. Who do you want me to unmute for this? Which participants?
Marcin is already unmuted, and who else, Kara? Is there
There's
just
a
one other person?
Michael Ogrodnik.
That's it.
No, Michael
No.
Ogrodnik
No.
is an attorney for an application that's going to be for completeness waivers, and he probably just wants to see, you know, the lay of the landscape for next month, because he's going to have an application on next month.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Kara, so it's you
Just
and
me and
Marcin?
Marcin. Yep.
Okay, we're good then.
And
Wonderful.
Marcin, you were previously sworn and you understand you're still under oath, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Marcin, do you have in front of you my letter to Susanna Karras, Land Use Secretary, dated June 1st, 2020?
Yes.
Okay, and a copy of that was previously submitted to the board. And do you have copies of the 13 attachments to that letter as well?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'd like to go through each one of those attachments. And before I do, did you take each one of those photographs?
Yes, I did.
And when you took them, did they exactly depict the condition of the property and what you took pictures of at that time?
Yes.
Okay, so I would just like to go through each one of those photographs. The first photograph, Marcin, is that the 4 hot water heaters that exist on the property?
Yes.
And the second photograph, is that, can you confirm that that is the inside of the water heater disconnection box for unit 553A?
Yes.
And there is 2 stickers on the inside of that box, correct?
Yes.
And the bottom sticker, does that reference the name Trumbull Electric Manufacturing Company?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move on. The next photograph, Marcin, is that another photo of the inside of the water heater disconnection box
Yes.
for 553A?
Ray, are you going to share your screen for these photographs?
I don't have those. I have the new submission, so I think-
Hold on, Ray, let me email you the June 1 letter with all those attachments.
I think what I have up now, Kara, is what you sent most recently, correct?
Yes, that, I'm going to get to that in my summation. The one immediately prior to that is the June 1st letter.
Yeah, I'm gonna send that out to Ray right now. Hold on.
Why don't you, Kara, do you have this document open on your computer?
I do not, but
Okay.
I can see if I can do that. You're testing my technology skills.
Because we can let you share it and walk us through it. That way I don't have to control it while you're speaking. We can do it the other way, but it might be easier if you share it from your computer.
I need to see how I can even get out of.
Ray, I just emailed it to you.
Which email did you use, John?
Oh, let me find out.
Because you're sending stuff to iCloud, and that's a separate system than what I'm using now.
Oh, okay. Where do you want me to send it?
Do you have my Pinnacle Polymers email address?
Yep.
Yeah, send it to there, and
All right,
it'll jump.
Hold on.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
having trouble
I just sent it
accessing,
there.
having
Ray,
trouble accessing my system while I'm on the Zoom call.
Yeah, listen, don't worry, Kara, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
Ray's
you
next.
could go ahead. I'll bring it up when it arrives. But I mean, I have all that stuff printed out. I mean, I think everybody has copies of, because you're going over the things that were submitted.
Ray or
2
Susanna,
months ago.
which email,
Correct.
what dated email was that included in? Because I'm scrolling through mine now and I have difficulty finding it.
I have an April 28th, 2020.
No, no,
I
no.
think that might be
Now, these
it.
were the ones that were just submitted.
No, guys, listen. She's referring back to the June 1 submission. She's later gonna refer to the June 11 submission. Ray has June 11, and I just emailed him June 1. So let's just take a little break here, and Ray will get June 1 up there, and he'll post into the meeting the pictures that Kara's talking about.
Okay.
And I'm happy to go back if the board would like me to and start with the first photograph.
So this is June 1, correct, Kara?
Yeah,
That's
that's
June
June
11.
11. That's June 11, Ray.
Oh, wait a minute.
You guys want this side of my face lit up, or am I all right like this? If you do, I'll turn on another light over there.
John, you look great, as is.
Anyone care? I'm trying to fill the time a little.
You may want to make it darker. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm with Frank.
John, you set yourself up for that one. Come on.
That's all right. That's all right. Guys, eat a little bit more time. Hey, at least I got a haircut.
There you go.
Ray, it's
How
June
did you do
11
that?
again.
What?
June 1.
That's 100%.
That's the one that keeps coming up when I click on your, here it is. It was just over.
The email I just sent you.
It might be an overlay.
Yeah, it was an
the other
overlay.
option is I think you can call in or just dial the phone number. If you go.
They'll try to get Joe.
Is the right one showing now? I got about
That's
seven,
it. There we
all right.
go.
about 7 things on my screen when I go to screen share,
Greenwich
so it's hard to pick the
Township.org.
right thumbnail.
So Ray, Kara's up to the
Go there,
second
there's a
picture,
link. No, there's only one, greenwichtownship.org.
that one. And she's
Okay,
about
so
to,
that was picture number 2.
Have a
So
whole
now we're going to move on
bunch
to
of-
picture number 3.
Maybe I'll just give it to you.
And Marcin, that is the second sticker inside the water heater disconnection box for unit 553A, correct?
Yes.
And is there a reference on the bottom to the 1951 edition of the National Electric Code?
Yes, it is.
Okay, the next photograph, actually the next 2 photographs, we don't need to go through those. We're just additional photos of 553A, which are unnecessary. So if we can go to the next one right after that.
that'll be picture number 6, right?
Correct. So that would be, Marcin, is that the inside of the water heater disconnection box for 553B?
Yes, it is.
And if we look at the next one, Is that
Picture
another
7.
photo of the inside of the box for 553B?
Yes, it is.
And on that sticker, I know it's kind of small, but this was a photo that the board had before. Is that a reference to 1952 date on the left-hand side of the sticker?
Yes, it is.
I can't see it, but I might just not be
It's
seeing it.
right, yeah, if we,
It's in
can
a,
you see my cursor? Probably
I'm
not.
just going to keep enlarging it.
There it is, it's right there.
Oh, right there.
Yep, correct,
Yep, 1952. Okay.
correct. Okay, so photograph number 8. Marcin, is that the disconnection box for 555A?
yes,
And the next photo, is that the inside of that box for 555A?
yes, it is.
Okay, that's the inside. And
Yes.
then if we flip to photograph 10, is that a photograph of the sticker inside 555A?
Yes, it is.
And does that sticker reference the 1951 edition of the National Electrical Code?
Yes, it is.
Okay, the next photograph, 11.
Kara, just slow down a little, because whatever happens here, I'm the guy who's got to do the resolution. I got to get this, all these dates and the facts and the figures correct, okay?
Sure, you got it. And I'll do a little summation. I'll go very slow. You'll be able to get that there as well, but I will definitely go slower, John.
We are recording, John, too, so you can always go back if you have to.
I'd rather not have to, but that's all right.
Okay, so this one again, Marcin, this is the sticker inside 555A, correct?
Yes, yes, it is.
And there's a reference to the 1951 edition of the National Electrical Code on that sticker, correct?
And
Yes.
where is that?
Right on the top.
Oh, I see. Yep.
See where my cursor is?
Yep.
I'm not sure if my cursor's showing up that well, but
No, it is. I
It is,
see
you
it.
can see it.
Yep. It's just 30 amps on the left, 125 volts, and you start reading. For motor circuit use, see paragraph 4383B and 440T02B of the 1951 edition of the National Electric Code. Got it.
Correct. Thanks, John. Okay, the next photograph, number 12. Is that the inside of the box for unit 555B?
Yes, no, that's 5,
Actually, I
no,
think
no.
we've got the wrong one on the screen. I think we got to go forward. I think we went back.
No, he didn't go.
There we go.
Gotta go
That's it.
Yeah.
right. You got to go forward one more to number
No,
12.
that's it right there. That's the first photo of 555B.
Yes,
And then the last photograph, is that a close-up of the sticker inside 555B?
yes, it is.
And is there actually, let's wait until he can put that next one on the screen.
Frank, you have someone trying to get admitted to the meeting. I don't know if you see that. You're muted, Frank.
I think that's Joe. I gave him a phone number. Let's see.
Okay.
Next
I'm
slide.
sorry, Kara, you can go ahead.
That's okay. So then we just need the next slide, which is the last one. And Marcin, that's a close-up of the sticker inside the box for 555B,
Okay, Frank, I'm in.
correct?
Yes, 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 it is.
And is that a reference to 1959 on that sticker?
Yes.
It looks like April 17th, 1959.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that is all of the photographs that were submitted on June 1st to the board. And that represents all of the disconnection boxes. At the last meeting, we had only provided ones for the upstairs units. So we've provided now ones for all 4 units. And unless the board has any other questions of Marcin, I don't at this time.
Okay, so the premise is that because of the dates on the inside of these disconnect boxes, they were all there prior to, what did we say, 1977, Kara? That was the
That's correct.
date. Okay.
So
And
Kara,
then there was something else that was newer. I don't know if you
Right.
needed to show that or not. It had
you
to be.
tie in because you made reference to Trumbull, and the thing that you submitted on June 11 has a reference to Trumbull, and it's got like a spreadsheet. So could you please tie that in now?
Yep, that's what I was gonna do as part of my summation. I could do it now before we finish, Marcin. That's fine, whatever you
Yeah,
prefer.
I think you should gotta do it now, because if people have questions on it, it shouldn't come in you can also mention it in the summation, but to get it in the record, you gotta do it before the summation. You gotta do it while people are, still have the ability to ask questions, and they're not supposed to then be deliberating right next.
That's totally fine, and I won't subject you to saying it twice. I'll say it now. So the submission to the board of June 11th referenced 2 attachments. And the websites where each of these attachments came from were provided. The first one is entitled New Jersey Model Code Adoptions.
Hey, wait for Ray's gonna get this thing up on the screen, so hold up.
You know what, hey, John, for the record, Joe Fiamma is now part of the meeting.
Right.
So-
For the record, Joe, you can, participate in everything, but since you didn't hear the whole thing, I'm gonna say that you shouldn't vote, okay?
Okay, very good. Okay.
So Kara, I have 2 documents. One shows, it looks like some kind of a disconnect. It's a picture, and the other one shows a chart.
Yes, the chart would be the first one.
Okay, I'm going to try to rotate it after I share it, but we'll.
I mean, actually, I can do either. It really doesn't matter. Whichever one's easier for you to put up there first.
Now you can see the chart?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, let me, sorry.
You are much better at this than I am, that's for sure.
So that's a little bit better. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So this is entitled New Jersey Model Code Adoptions. Based upon the letter that was submitted to the board dated June 11th. This was obtained directly from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs website. The website address where this was obtained is in the letter. And you could see if you go 3 columns over from the left, you'll see a reference to the NEC, the National Electrical Subcode. And you'll see that in New Jersey, it started in 1975. Or there was one adopted in 1975, and then pretty much every 3 years thereafter. And I wanted to be able to show the board that there was a 1975 model code adoption of the National Electrical Code. So if those disconnect boxes had been installed after 1975, they would have referenced the 1975 code that had been adopted, and not the 1951 code that each one of them references. So I would submit to the board that that is proof that these boxes were in fact installed prior to 1977. And in fact, even prior to 1975.
And let me just add one thing. The board in its rules can take judicial notice of an official government document. So based on this chart coming from a DCA, which is a New Jersey state website, in my opinion, the board can take judicial notice of the document. She doesn't need a witness to testify that in fact, this chart is XYZ or ABC or whatever. The board can accept the fact that this is an official chart adopted by the Division of the State of New Jersey.
Thank you, John. Okay, and then the next one is really just some additional information for you in connection with 553A. The chart clearly shows that the reference to the 1951 adoption is sufficient. However, I just wanted to provide the board with some additional proof, some additional historical proof. And when we get that next one up there, I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Bear with me a second. I had it here a minute ago. That's the one with the picture on it, correct?
Correct.
Oh, there we go. Okay. These thumbnails are really small. It's hard to tell what you're looking at.
You're doing a great job.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so again, this is just some additional support for the fact that the Unit 553A existed prior to 77. If you'll recall, there was a sticker in that box that referenced the Trumbull Electric Manufacturing Company. This particular document was obtained from the Harvard University's Collection of Historical Scientific Instruments website. And the address is also in the letter dated June 11th. And you'll see that that document states that the company began in 1899, manufactured and sold electrical supply parts, and in 1918, they joined with General Electric. However, several of their products maintained the Trumbull name as late as the 1960s. So again, reference on that sticker to this Trumbull Electric Manufacturing Company, I submit to the board, clearly shows that it was installed during the 1960s and most certainly prior to 1977.
A quick question. Only picture 2 showed something referencing Trumbull, right?
Correct. Yes, that is just 553A. And again,
Yeah.
it supplements the DCA document.
Right, but you also have a picture from that unit showing the 1951 addition to the electrical code, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so my advice to the board is to ignore the Trumbull Electric thing. It's not an official government website. You don't need it to decide the case. I think you can decide the case based on the stickers that the witness has testified to, taking pictures of himself, and the official government record chart showing that if any of this electrical boxes had been installed after 1975, the 1975 NEC would have applied. So the fact that these boxes have stickers on a prior code, 1951, 1959, 1952, that would prove her case.
So Kara, did John just do your summation for you?
He pretty much did. I was going to throw in some standards that the board has to abide by with regard to making sure that they don't make an arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable decision. I was going to throw in that there's been no other proof to the contrary presented to the board other than the testimony and the actual photographic evidence that was provided. I had some cases that I was going to cite, that, other than that, pretty much sums up my presentation to the board.
Well, I don't want to prejudice anyone on the board, but it seems to me you have 2 black marks going across the curb here on this one. If you remember our meeting several months ago, if you understand what I'm referring to, but the stickers in the electrical code seems like pretty compelling. Let me open it up and see if anyone on the board has any questions. And then we'll have to figure out if we have anyone from the public participating and open it up for questions there as well.
You want to stop sharing your screen, Ray?
Sure, I can do that.
And yes, Mr. Chairman, I do appreciate the reference and I remember it as well.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
All right. So the stickers that are on the boxes that are referencing 1957, 1959, those are manufacturer stickers for the time that they were, they weren't specific to a location like New Jersey or California, anything like that. That was national equipment referencing national code that could have been shipped anywhere in the country, right?
I don't know the answer to that. Marson, I don't know if you do, but I do know that they were, the one for 555B was a handwritten date that was on there. It's very difficult to see what's left of the sticker, but it was clearly a handwritten date of 1959. And the other one with regard to unit 553B, this, yes, was a manufacturing sticker.
Okay.
Referencing 1952.
And the document from DCA referencing the 1975 New Jersey adoption of the NEC, was that, do we know, was that the first adoption for New Jersey, was the 1975 NEC? There wasn't anything prior, correct?
They did not have anything prior on their website. The NEC was obviously adopted much earlier than that nationally, but each state on its own accord adopted them subsequent to the original national adoption. This is what was available on the New Jersey DCA website with regard to all adoptions of the NEC.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Frank, do you know who we have on the roll here? Because it looks like we may have some people from the public. I guess we
Here
should
we go.
unmute.
Yeah, I'll unmute everybody.
Yeah, unmute everybody, and then we can see if anybody that's participating from the public has any questions.
There's a Bill and Doris G.
Everybody's on. Oh, okay, got muted.
Bill and Doris G. Are you interested in this application?
We're interested. We have no questions.
You have no questions. Do you plan on making any statements?
No.
Okay, can we then mute you again?
Sure.
There's somebody, FE 30961, it's causing feedback. I'm going to mute that person unless they have a
Let's
question.
just ask who they are first. Who is FE 30961? Can you identify yourself, please? Frank, if they're not going to identify themselves, they don't have to, but then they don't have the right to speak. So can
It
you
looks
please
like they
mute them?
muted, they stopped the feedback, so we're okay.
Okay, so I'm just
Is there
going to ask.
anyone else from the public who can hear us and wants to ask any questions or speak about this application?
Now that person's asking to speak. So you can speak, you're not muted, FE 30961.
It's Joe Gonzalez. I'm sorry, I lost you guys and I came, but I don't know. Did you guys call me at any time? I'm sorry if you did.
No, we didn't. Do you want to add anything?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Can you just mark that or rename him, Frank?
Yep.
So we know where Joe is. Alias FE 30961.
I'm sorry. That's
So,
Nah, that's okay. It just
my work computer. That's my log on.
no, that's fine. Okay, it seems like we don't have anyone from the public that is interested to make any and ask any questions or make any statements on this application. Is that correct?
That's correct, Ray.
I was right.
Okay, so that being the case, then I think we need to ask. Well, I think we need to. John, can you summarize what we should be voting on?
Yes. So the applicant has requested both certification under Section 68 of the Municipal Land Use Law, certification that 4 apartments in this building were lawfully created, pre-existing nonconformities entitled to continue, and for the board to exercise its power to certify, the board has to interpret the ordinance and the question presented under NJSA 40:55D-70B as in boy. So what the question for the board is, based on the evidence that's been presented over the course of this hearing, and for the record, this hearing started on March 12, 2020, was continued on May 14, 2020, and is now concluding tonight on July 9, 2020. The question is, was the evidence presented sufficient so that the board believes that it's more likely than not, because the standard that applies to a board's decision, other than for the negative criterion of a D1 use variance, all the other standards for all the other relief and for interpretations are the preponderance of the evidence. Was the evidence more likely than not to show the board that these 4 apartment units were created prior to 1977, because that was the first ordinance in the township which prohibited multifamily there. And if the board finds on the evidence that, in fact, these 4 units pre-existed 1977, then the board would certify that these were lawfully created, pre-existing, non-conforming 4 apartments, and further, that they're entitled to continue. That's the question before you, and that's what someone would make the motion on. And Kara has her hand up asking to speak.
Yeah, I'm unmuting.
Go ahead, Kara.
Thanks, Frank. I just want to clarify, there's also the 1 unit in the rear building, remember?
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
I
the
don't
one
think that
unit,
was
right,
ever in dispute.
right, that one
my
wasn't in
understanding.
dispute,
Okay,
right.
I just want to make sure, so it's 5, not 4.
No, no, good point, good point, good point.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions about what we're voting on, I think John just did a good job of describing it, then just raise your hand and we can answer them. If not, then I'll ask for a motion
To so certify.
to certify the pre-existing 1977 occupancy of 4 units in the main building.
And that one unit in the back is also,
Correct, yeah, we'll make sure we capture that as well. So we have a motion to certify the pre-existing units in the main building, 4 units in the
Gary-
main building, and 1 unit in the rear building at 551, 555 South Main Street.
I make that motion.
Thank you, Dawn.
I think it's North.
I'll second it.
I think Joe beat you to it, Bruce. Okay, roll call?
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Totelo,
Yes.
go
Frank
slow,
Marchetta?
please. Go slow for me, please.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Colin,
No, you're breaking up, Kathy. Try
Kathy, raise your hand if you vote yes. Click the button.
Yeah, it looks like it's
that.
freezing.
Frozen.
No. You're breaking up.
Let's come back to Kathy because the internet might improve.
Yeah.
And Kathy, if you can hear me, hit the raise hand button only if you're voting yes.
Gary Hill,
Yes.
Don Marie Condas,
Yes.
and Jeremy Blunt.
Yes.
Okay, we need to record Kathy's vote. Kathy, you want to call, can you call Ray on his cell phone? Can you call me on my cell phone?
Well, she can vote by text, right? There's a chat function.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kathy, can you
chat.
text to
I
Ray?
hope she can chat.
Ray, could you send her a text so she can reply to it?
I'm doing that right now.
She said that she was absent on March 12th.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
the March 12th meeting.
Okay, she cannot vote. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. So Kathy is going to abstain?
Yes, Kathy's abstaining and Joe Fiamma is abstaining.
Okay.
Actually, it's not even abstaining, Ray. They're not eligible to vote.
Not eligible to vote.
Yeah, both of them are not eligible.
Okay. So we have, well.
You have 9, and all they needed was a majority. So,
Right. So the motion
the
carries.
motion passes, and I will do a resolution.
Okay. So, and I think we have the escrow straightened out now, so we can
Yes,
release
escrow-
both of resolutions, correct?
correct.
Awesome.
Well, I thank you all for your time, your consideration, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Kara. Best of
Take
luck.
care, Kara.
They want to get it right.
Good
Understood.
presentation too.
That's what it's all about.
All
Good
right.
night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Kara.
Take care.
So the next thing I have on the agenda, we have 2, I think we have 2 completeness reviews.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to suggest doing them before the other item mentioned on the agenda anyway. So go ahead, Ray. You're on.
Yeah, I was going to do the same because that could
Yep.
be a discussion that these folks might not particularly be fascinated with.
You don't
So the completeness reviews for, geez, I know one's Home Depot and one's Ross, right?
Right. Ross is
So I'm trying to
listed.
find that here on the agenda.
Yeah,
So
per the
else-
agenda, Ross is listed first. Home Depot is second.
Okay. Mike, you did the completeness reviews. Do you have any preference for which order we tackle these?
No, 6 of one, half dozen of another.
As I recall, the Home Depot one, you did not object to any of the waivers that the applicant had requested. Is that correct?
No, that's Ross, actually.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry, that's Ross.
Home Depot isn't much different, to be honest, but there is a difference in the type.
Can I make a suggestion? The agenda says Ross is first. Let's do Ross.
We'll do Ross.
Now, I know there are 2 other people that have been muted that are here for Ross.
Okay?
So,
We don't have too many people here, so I think we could probably easily unmute them and not have
yeah.
a major issue.
Right, I believe you have Michael Grodnick, who's the attorney, and you have Mike Textoris, who's the engineer.
Correct.
All right, both unmuted.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Michael Grodnick. I'm an attorney at Savo, Shaw, Gillespie, Grodnick, and Fisher. I'm here just for completeness review on a minor site plan with variances for Phillipsburg Greenwich LLC. This is the old Staples store. There's a new retailer. They're known as Ross Dress for Less. They're big down south and out west. And they want to open up a store in the former Staples property. As part of that, they want to redo the facade. The facade changes contemplate a height variance for some of the architectural changes. There's also some minor changes to the site layout with respect to shipping and some of the shipping and receiving areas and dumpster areas. We do have our engineer from Van Cleef Engineering, Mike Textoris here. But unless there's any questions, we're just looking for completeness at this point.
Yeah, Michael, we're just doing completeness. And so what we typically do, the board has a report from our engineer, Mike Finelli. So we usually only talk about the things where you've requested waivers because nothing else is really germane for completeness. And then we would only discuss anything where we have a question about granting waivers. So, Mike, do you want to just run through? You just moved. Do you just want to run through the waivers that have been requested and your recommendation?
Sure. There's two sets of checklist items. There's the minor site plan checklist items, and then there's the variance checklist items. The current waivers that are being requested. Now,
I'm sorry, Mike, let me stop you there for a minute. Of the 15 waivers, are there any that you disagree with? Let's deal with those first, because that will be the time-consuming part if there are any.
I was going to ask how you wanted to proceed. No. We have to remember, this is a pretty straightforward application relative to the site plan component of it. It's really more about signage and the building height. So a lot of the checklist items, fences and parking and other things of that nature really don't apply. That's the majority of the waivers, and we are taking no exception to all of the requests.
Okay, so you have no objection to any of the requested waivers. I mean, most of these site plan issues on this site are baked in because it's an existing site and it's already been through all of this. So,
correct.
Knowing that everyone on the board did their homework, does anyone on the board have any issue with any of the waivers, the 15 waivers for minor site plan that Mike is recommending that we capitulate to? Well, that sounds like silence. So I would say that we would, by default, the board agrees with your recommendations to grant those waivers, Mike.
And one question to the applicant. The tax payment certification, and this applies to both the variance checklist as well as the site plan checklist. We basically said as long as we're going to provide that prior to the hearing, which could be next month, still to be determined. The applicant fine with that as far as having that available for next month?
Someone's got to unmute Grodnick again.
Yeah.
Let Michael out of his cage there.
Yeah, that's fine. We actually sent an email this week to the tax collector, so we'll certainly update with a letter indicating that the taxes are current.
Very good. All right. That's the only one that really required any question or additional information. So
okay. And just as a general comment to remind anyone, these are waivers from completeness. It doesn't mean that any of these issues can't be revisited during the actual site plan discussion. This is just to complete the application and start the process. So I know it seems sometimes like we're kind of fast tracking this, but it is mostly an administrative process at this point. So Mike, then on the variance checklist, you have other items there?
Again, there's two of those. One is they just have to amend the application form. They didn't check off a box they needed to. We'll get to the fees. I will save that for last. And we already talked about the tax certification and the notice to the adjacent property owners, which will be provided prior to the hearing, which will have to be provided prior to the hearing. So,
but to be clear, is the applicant requesting a waiver from notice or tax or completing the form or paying the fees?
Well, let's.
Michael Grodnick is shaking his head. No, he's not.
No.
He's muted again. We keep putting Mike back in his
I don't
cage.
put him on mute. He's putting himself on mute.
Oh, okay. Maybe
No,
there's
we're not
birds in the background there.
We're not requesting any waivers with respect to those items.
Okay, so Mike Ogrodnik, if the board made a motion to grant all the requested waivers for the site plan application and told you that you got to do everything you got to do for the variance application, other than the notice, which as a matter of law, you don't do the notice before you're complete. Would that be a problem to you?
Nope. Oh, that's acceptable to the applicant.
Okay.
All right, there's one last somewhat minor item, and that's there was a misrepresentation, I guess, of the fee that was submitted. So has the applicant, and we basically asked that additional fee. Which
and he said, Mike, he said yes.
Well, we didn't even talk about the fees. Okay, all right. I thought he was talking about this notice and the.
No. I asked him everything. He said yes to the fees. So
Fine. Then good.
If the board makes a motion to grant all 15 requested waivers from the site plan checklist, then he's got to do the couple things you want him to do, and then you can administratively deem them complete. And if he does them quick enough, he can get on for a hearing.
Well, there's again, for clarification's sake, John, from what you said, 15 minor site plan checklist items and 4 variance checklist items. So there's actually 19 altogether, 15 plus 4.
But the 4 variance checklist items have to be completed before you will deem it complete. They're just not complete at this point in time.
Well,
Mike Finelli.
Well, actually, the notice, I would say 3 of those.
A couple of them can't get unless we're going to wait until next month to deem it complete. A few of these we can't.
Mike, other than the notice, again, the applicant's attorney said, if the board grants the 15 site plan checklist waivers, they will submit everything that they have to do on the variance checklist before you deem them complete. They don't have to come back to the board to be deemed complete. You're going to deem them complete. The board adopted a resolution in the beginning of the year. I said that legally, they obviously don't have to do the notice before they're complete.
Correct.
But they agreed. They're going to change the plan. They're going to give you the fees and whatever else you said in there. They're going to do it. That's what Michael Grodnick said.
Then we're good to go.
Okay, so I need a motion to grant the waivers.
Make a motion.
15 waivers from the site plan checklist.
Correct. I'm sorry, Mark Scuderi, was that you?
Yes.
All right. Quick on the draw. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Dawn. And then roll call vote, please.
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Sotelo,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Colin.
She's frozen.
Yes.
Kathy, if you hear, just raise your hand if it's a yes. All right, she's going to abstain for now unless she can vote yes or no.
John Marie Fonda.
Yes.
She's raised her hand. She's showing a raised hand.
Okay, so Kathy Cullen's yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
And Don Raycondas, you said yes, right?
I said yes.
Okay. Mark Scuderi
Yes.
and Joseph Fiamma
Yes.
What about Gary Hill?
and Gary Hill.
Yes.
Okay, so Mike Ogrodnik and Mike Finelli. Mike Ogrodnik, when you make the submissions for those remaining checklist items for the variance checklist, you're going to submit them directly to the board office, but make sure you send copies to Finelli because he's the guy who's going to deem your application complete. Also send them direct to Beth McManus so there's no delay in getting her report, and also send them directly to me. Okay, Mike?
Very good.
Okay, Mike Finelli?
Absolutely, right on point.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, everybody. So the next completeness review is distributed solar development.
Now, I spoke with the attorney for distributed solar development, which is for the roof of the Home Depot yesterday. He said that since they got the report from Mike Finelli, basically having no objection to any of the waivers, that they're hoping that the board could grant them without him having to appear. And the board has done completeness waivers without the applicant's attorney or engineer appearing. So I don't have, there's no legal problem with that.
So Mike, these are all site plan waivers?
Well, again, minor site plan, but yes.
I'm sorry, minor site plan waivers.
Okay. Yeah.
And how many waivers did they request, and do you object to any of them?
Well, this is a little different actually than the prior one because they actually complied with the vast majority of the items. There was a few items, and again, they're listed in my report. There's 8 in total. Block and lot number on the title sheet. Really minor things. Upon receipt of the letter, I secured and I was sent a revised plan yesterday afternoon, of which I reviewed and haven't produced anything. And basically there's one item, which is the same item that we just discussed, and that's the tax certification, which of course, a lot of times that we will not require that at this point, but we'll obviously need it before the hearing commences. So this one's even simpler than the last one based upon receipt of those revised plans, which I sent them to Susanna, who will send them to all the board members. I didn't want the board members to get a revised plan an hour or two before the meeting tonight. That wouldn't have been fair. And not necessary, to be honest with you. They're minor things. So if the board has reviewed my letter, and if there are no questions about the few items that I brought up and listed, I would make a motion to deem the application complete.
But Mike, my opinion, it's bad form to have the board deem it complete. Let the board vote on whether or not to grant the completeness waivers. They want you to deem it complete.
I should be used to that by now.
You should.
Well, there's no completeness waivers.
So there's no waivers, and the only thing they have to do before the hearing is satisfy the tax certification.
There is one completeness waiver, that's a tax certification.
Right.
So the motion would be to grant the one remaining waiver for the tax certification, and just say though that the hearing's not gonna go on without it. Make that part of the motion, and then Mike can deem this thing complete tomorrow.
Yep.
A motion?
I make the motion.
Thanks, Dawn. I think Mark Scuderi got a second. Can we get a roll call?
Paul Beam,
Yes.
Joseph Chitello,
Yes.
Frank Marchetta,
Yes.
Ray Buckwalter,
Yes.
Bruce Williams,
Yes.
Kathy Cullen,
She
She raised her hand. We're good.
Gary Hill,
Abstain.
Okay, are you recusing?
I'm gonna, yeah, actually, I just remembered, I I used to work for Home Depot many years ago, so I should probably recuse
Well,
myself.
how many years ago? More than 5?
Yes.
You believe it or not, as conservative as I am with this stuff, you do not have to recuse yourself. Unless you have any Home Depot stock,
No.
you do not have to recuse yourself.
Okay. In that case, I'll vote yes.
Don Marie Condas,
I guess I have Home Depot stock. I didn't even think about that. Sorry. Do I have
So you're
to
gonna,
myself?
you're gonna, well, we should talk, why don't you recuse yourself for now? Give me a call tomorrow and we'll take a look at it.
Let's face it this way, it's not enough for me to, own the company.
Right, well, put it right. So,
And so,
Dawn Marie, let's talk about it tomorrow. Recuse for tonight. I'll bet you that you're not gonna have to recuse from the application.
okay.
I meant if he used to work there, did he have stock options? Did he have something like that? That's what I meant, not simply
So John, she made the motion though.
Made the motion, so maybe somebody should make that motion.
someone else should make the motion.
You're gonna have to revote, I guess. I don't know.
I'll make the motion.
okay.
So let's just say Bruce made the motion instead of Dawn Marie, seconded by Mark, if my memory's correct, and then we can just continue voting from where we are. Dawn Marie is
Recusing
abstaining.
for now. Recusing
Abstaining
for now.
on this vote, and then we'll just, John, you can discuss with her whether she needs to recuse.
Right.
Mark Scuderi,
Yes.
and that's it.
Okay.
How
a
about
motion-
Gary? Oh, wait, we got Gary Hill this time.
We have him.
Well, we got him. Yeah, that motion carries.
So John, you're okay with the votes, even though the original motion was from somebody who recused?
We substituted the person. It wasn't from Dawn Marie. The person who made the motion was, identify yourself again?
Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah. Bruce Williams made the motion.
Okay, we didn't revote, but that's okay.
So would anybody have changed their vote?
Good point.
I don't see anybody saying they would have changed their vote, so I think we're okay.
I know John's such a stickler for these things.
I know. It's
If
hot.
it gets by John, Frank, I mean, we're good. I shouldn't say if it gets by John. Nothing gets by John. If he's okay with it, we're good.
Yep.
All right. So the last thing we have on the agenda tonight is the discussion of the solar ordinance, which turned out to be somewhat more complicated than I thought it would be. Also, Mike, when you sent the completeness report for Home Depot, I spent an hour trying to figure out why they needed any relief whatsoever, because I was looking at the solar ordinance, not realizing that it had to do with site plan.
Very good.
But so now I'm more familiar with that solar, or I should say renewable energy ordinance, than I even was 2 months ago. So, Beth, are you prepared?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
I'll give you the, well, I know you're prepared. Are you ready to?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So the last time we talked about this was a couple months now, and the reason why the solar ordinance came up, just to refresh everybody's memory, is because since the ordinance was written, I think back in 2008, the technology has changed a lot. And so fundamentally, and very simply, solar panels look differently. And so the township thought, I think, although I could be wrong, I think based on some requests or some interest from folks, maybe it was time to take another look at the renewable energy ordinance as it relates to rooftop solar panels, and to determine if additional flexibility is a good idea. And when I say additional flexibility, the regulation that's really in question is the provision of your ordinance that prohibits solar panels from being mounted to a roof that faces the street. And so this has, and so we started to talk about this, and I put together an ordinance. We talked a little bit about the concept of permitting maybe some solar panels that would face a roof, face a street. And so I put together an ordinance that created a new classification of solar panels, essentially building integrated solar, or building integrated solar, and it refers predominantly to roofs, but it also includes things like windows and other types of building materials. And not to rehash the big discussion we had a couple months, but just to make sure everybody remembers, it is the concept of using a solar energy generating material as the building material itself. So if you think about it in terms of a window, I think it's the easiest example to sort of wrap your mind around. In that example, the window itself, the glass pane, is actually generating the energy. And for that reason, it's an integrated solar technology. The solar generating technology is literally integrated into the building envelope. So in roofs, what that means is, if folks are familiar with the Tesla roof, which is, I think, the most popular brand name, Tesla is literally creating building or roof shingles that generate solar energy. So instead of purchasing a solar panel and putting it on top of your existing maybe asphalt shingles, this is actually a new type of shingle that's not only providing weatherization to the building, but is also creating solar energy. And so we talked about this, and folks remained uncertain as to whether they were comfortable seeing the basically any different type of a roof from the street, because as we had talked a little bit about, while building integrated solar, it looks a whole lot better. It looks much closer to a typical roof. It is, I think it's pretty rare that they're indistinguishable, especially where you have a roof that's partially this building integrated solar and partially not. And so that's a great example. And so that, I don't know if that's actually a Tesla roof, but that's exactly the type of material that that Tesla is providing, and other manufacturers are getting on board with this as well. So as you can see in this picture, the roof material itself, the material that's providing the building weatherization, is actually a solar, it's actually energy generating. So one of the things that's a distinction here, as compared to some of the images that I put together and I think have been shared with the board members, one of the important features I see here is that the entire roof is this solar energy material. So at no point do you look at a portion of the roof and think that it looks different than any other portion. It just simply looks like a new and modern roofing material. So,
yeah, so what I brought up there,
yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Beth.
No.
That's actually the Tesla website. That's a picture of the roof
I see
system.
that, yeah, with the Model S, yep.
Yeah, just so people can get the idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, did you want to, or does somebody, I don't know if I can share my screen and shows the images that I had put together before, or if you want to grab those and share them.
If you can do it, go ahead, because you have what you want to share. I don't.
Oh yeah, here, let me do it. I'm not allowed to. Yeah,
Well, Frank, can you give Beth, make her a co-host or whatever we need to do so she can.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Okay, so I'm hoping you guys can see this picture, traditional solar in Suntegra.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Okay, just so everybody's aware, I submitted a short cover memo and then a number of pictures. So that's what I'm going to go through this evening. So I chose this picture first because I think it's not the best picture of building integrated solar, but I think it really clearly identifies the difference in the traditional solar versus, this is a brand of Suntegra, but of generally building integrated solar. And as you can see, if folks have good enough resolution on their computers, and I'll show it in greater detail in some other images, what you can see for the Suntegra side is you can see mostly where their circle is. You see the building integrated solar where it's actually the roofing material, but as you can see, they did not redo the entire roof. And so you do see a distinction between their existing brown roof and the darker blackish color of the building integrated solar. So that's one example. Next, this is another image from Tesla. This is another example of a building integrated solar. in my mind, I find that this solar roof looks fantastic. It looks better than some other roofing choices of typical asphalt roofs some residents make. I will say, of course, that the Tesla roof and going through an entire roof replacement, or if this is your initial roof for a new home, is of course more costly. And I think some of the pros and cons and the philosophy behind what we decide to do is something that we should talk about. But let me go through these pictures first, just to make sure everybody has a good foundation for that discussion. So that's another solar roof, or a building integrated solar roof. Sorry, my
What's the
computer's-
life on these? Do you know, Beth?
Yeah, they are. Here's a close-up of it. My understanding is that they're quite long, like 20 years. Although to be fair, it probably depends on the brand you buy. But it's comparable to a typical asphalt shingle roof. I mean, depending on the brand of asphalt shingles you buy, and depending on the brand of the solar roof that you buy. So here's a close-up. And so I thought this was a great example too, because this is one of these hybrid roofs, if you will, where we've got a building integrated solar in the middle of the roof and then the asphalt shingles surrounding it. And so, you know, the idea of permitting the building integrated solar as the only type of renewable energy roofing material that you can see from the street, I think that this type of a scenario actually undermines that, because while it might look better than traditional panels, it's very easy, I think, and it's obvious in your ability to differentiate between a conventional roof and the solar roof. And so here's another image of, I think, that exact same building. You can see just one of the things that is interesting with the solar roof, an advantage, is that you don't have to worry about how far the panels will project from the roof line. If you remember, that's, and I don't know if you guys have had this issue with your homeowners. It hasn't come across my desk, but there are some homeowners that seek to lift the panels from the roof so it's no longer parallel in order to enhance the angle that the panels are facing towards the sun, in order to enhance their energy generation. But with the building integrated solar, it's a non-issue, since, as I said, it's literally part of the building envelope. And so here's another example. So you can see how this, I forget the manufacturer of this, but you can see exactly how this manufacturer ties into the existing roof. And so here's another example. I hope folks have good enough resolutions. It might be, I can imagine it could be difficult to see. But this is an example of a solar roof placed on a metal roof. And here, the distinction between the two different types of roofing panels, in part because of their color, but also because of the materials, is much less. I think it's harder to differentiate between the two different roofing materials. And so here's just another example of one that's under construction, so you can start to see how the inner workings occur. Here's another example of a solar roof. And again, I think what's interesting here is it's the entire roof that consists of it. And this is an example of another type of building integrated solar. If you remember, right when we started, I talked about an example of solar glass, essentially, of solar windows. And this is an example of that. I believe this is Bell Labs in, I think it's Homedale in New Jersey. And so they utilized that technology to generate solar within the building material, or the window materials. And then last but not least, what we see here, if you look up above the person, you see building integrated solar, but instead of being a typical roof or a window, what we see is they've utilized it as a canopy to provide shade as you enter the building. And so those are the general examples. I think what you guys are going to see for resident requests and likely for business requests is going to be solar upon the roof. That's by far the most popular method of generating solar from a building, as opposed to the windows and the canopies. But that said, I do think it's something that we should talk about, since you guys are taking the opportunity to to revamp your ordinance, we may as well get out in front of some of these other trends that are going to continue, or at least give yourselves an opportunity to think about it. So do you guys want me to keep my screen shared, or shall I go back so that we can see each other a bit better? I'm happy to go through the pictures again or go to certain ones.
Does anybody want to see any of the pictures again, or?
Yes, I do.
All right, then why don't you just keep it up there for a minute? Joe, you want to look at one now in particular, or just?
Yeah, there was one with exposed photovoltaic cells.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that, will there be something on top of those cells, another layer of glass or a transparent material? Is this, or is that what it looks like?
I believe.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. You know, I don't recall off the top of my head what brand this is. I'd have to check their specs, but I believe the intention here is to get an understanding about how the electronics of the solar panels work.
That one also looks like, to me, it's a picture of showing it under construction.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All those ladder jacks and stuff come off of there. That's just
Yeah.
for people to stand on while they're putting the panels up.
Oh, yes, 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 yeah.
But I was asking about the shingles themselves. They're exposed cells there. It's not as well hidden.
He's saying that doesn't look like a shingle. That actually looks like a traditional solar panel, except it's elongated. It's a long rectangle. That's what he's saying.
I'm just trying to see if that is the end product, the look of the end product shingle.
Yeah. I don't know which product that is, and I don't know if Beth does or doesn't.
Yeah, I think I could find it if you guys are interested. Give me 1 second.
It sounds like, Beth, that's one that some people might not like the looks of versus the other ones that it seems like everyone liked the looks of.
Well, and I think it also could depend a great deal on how far away from them you are and what angle you're looking at them.
Yeah,
You have to see the whole thing.
we're zoomed in on a roof that you're gonna be much, much farther away.
We were as close to several of the other examples. I think there's another layer of material on many of those other examples.
Well, in a roofing system, there's always going to be an underlayment. And actually new roofs now, they have, usually required by code in New Jersey, you have to have ice shield and you have to have an underlayment.
But if the concern is about the striping of the panels, one thing that is, let me just flip through some of these.
If you were a Yankee fan, you wouldn't mind the stripes on that roof.
So if you look at this roof, you can see that same striping, right, as we're zoomed in?
Oh, you can. How do you like that? Yep.
Yeah, but if you look at, in this direction, that's the same building. And so even just a couple dozen feet back, you can't see that level of detail on the roofing. So I think it's important to, just keep that in mind.
So Beth, the last time we talked about this, we're having a hard time describing, I think everyone has a general sense of what we're looking at, but how do we describe it in a way that makes it abundantly clear for somebody like a zoning officer or someone to make a decision as to whether something meets our the requirements or not? And that word integrated came up.
Right.
Is that, are you satisfied that that's a?
So a couple things. One, I think that we need to use that term if you want to identify, if you want to differentiate between this new technology and the traditional panels that are placed on top. It does not, however, mean that that's the only requirement to permit them facing the front of a street, facing a street. But I think what I need to be a little bit more clear on about is really how the board feels about this. And I also want to be clear that I don't think that there's any way for me to write an ordinance that would, well, perhaps with one exception. There's one exception, but I don't know that there's any way for me to guarantee that somebody is going to apply this roof and folks won't know. Folks will never know that it's not a typical metal or asphalt or slate roof. And if the expectation of the board is that the solar panels are invisible in the community, that that you're not willing to tolerate them being visible and the visual impact of this particular type of residential use, then I'm not sure. And then I think that the ordinance needs to remain very limited, because it's you know, I can talk about colors and percentage of the roof covered and things like that, but as you can see from some of the examples, including the one up on the screen now, it's, you know, even where we say the roof has got to be a darker gray, a minimum dark gray, in order to be similar in color to the solar. And I would say this roof is a darker gray, but it is very clear that they've got the solar panels located on it.
Yeah, it's not dark enough.
Exactly.
I mean, at
But
the
you
end of the
could-
day, this is all about aesthetics. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, I don't think there's any other reason why we have the restrictions that we do, because the old solar panels looked pretty abysmal. And so it, you know, to some degree, we should have a discussion about how high we want to set the bar on the aesthetic issues. Cause I would agree with you. I don't think you're ever going to have a situation where you're absolutely not going to be able to tell that it's solar.
The one exception I would say, Ray, is where there's a solar roof that covers 100%, like this example, for example, covers 100% of the roof visible from the street, or 100% of a particular roof line. Because here, I mean, for me, I would look at this house and go, oh, that's solar. But I don't think it looks particularly different than a metal roof that might be applied to a building. And so the board might want to consider, at a minimum, permitting these solar integrated roofs where either all of the roofing visible from the public street. So in this example, it would have to be this, if folks can see my mouse, the roof to the right, both stories roof in the center, and then you can see a little bit in the back. As opposed to all of the roof for which it is applied, because what I could see is they might decide to put the solar roofing on the second floor, and then this would create a different material as compared to the first floor and the two sides of the home.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
you know, the board needs to decide, and then the committee will have to decide to what extent it wants to place aesthetics of a roof above people's ability to generate renewable energy and their ability to cut their electricity bills. I really see that as the fundamental question. Where do your principles lie with this?
Yeah, my question is on the word integrated, because to me, integrated means that it has to be the same height as a regular shingle. Now, some of these that you showed, they were very close, but they were on top of regular shingles. If you would, can you show some of the other?
Yeah.
You go forward a little more, right there. See, that looks like it's on top of another shingle. It doesn't look like a replacement. Not that I'm opposed to it, but it doesn't look integrated. It just looks like it's laying on top.
That one looks like it's flush. It's just a different color.
No, it's not. You can see the lip there, John. Oh yeah, wait, you're right. It is. It's tongue and grooved in.
I think there's a shadow that's a little deceptive.
Yeah, no,
but
I
it looks
get it.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it's.
But even though it's integrated,
you can see
it's not.
Yeah, and this one's not though, right?
But you know, I mean, Frank, with all due respect, I mean, we're talking about 2 inches there, you know, at most. I'm not even sure it's that much. I think the bigger issue is the distinction between the visibility or the appearance of the two materials.
I'm just saying that to me, like this roof right here, that's not integrated. It's laying on top of it. I mean,
that one actually does look like it's on top of the asphalt roofing material.
Yeah, but I think I haven't gone through the specs of this home, but I think what we're going to find is the shingles are removed and replaced with the foundation, and then the solar shingles that are actually providing the water protection, etc., as opposed to having the asphalt shingles provide the water protection.
That's fine. Maybe that needs to be part of the definition of what integrated is.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe this is a question for John. I mean, part of the reason we're having this conversation is because I think we have one application pending that's actually a Tesla system, and they actually asked, you know, do we need a variance because we're Tesla? And I'm not you know, you know, proposing that we give Tesla some special dispensation because they're Tesla, but that system we know looks a lot different than the traditional systems.
Right, if you ask me, if these panels in fact are roof shingles,
Oh, I'm sorry.
meaning that they in fact protect the house from water, it seems to me that that's a roof shingle. And even though it might double as a solar panel, maybe that the ordinance doesn't even apply to them in the front. It seems to me the ordinance applies to anything, even if it's thin, that's applied over a roof shingle.
Yeah, that could be an interpretation, but what I was getting at, John, is one of the reasons that we're doing this is because I was out running the other day and there was people right over on, I think, Kennedy Mills Road putting solar panels on their roof. I stopped and said, front or back? And they said back. I'm like, okay. So, there's a lot of this going on.
Yep.
We don't necessarily, if it's a resident, we don't necessarily want residents having to spend a ton of money to get a variance to do something that at the end of the day looks nice and appropriate and is not aesthetically displeasing. Is there a mechanism where we could write an ordinance that says that they have to?
Here's the problem, Ray. If the ordinance standard is what looks good to somebody, that's not going to hold up in court. If the ordinance standard is the functionality of it, if it's a roof shingle and it keeps out the weather, that the ordinance doesn't apply, okay. So
you couldn't give the board oversight outside of a variance process.
Right, correct. The only way the board,
that was the question. So you've answered it.
Yep.
Gary, you have a question?
Hold on, is he,
He's muted.
Yeah.
But I
by
don't
the
know if
way,
he-
Beth, in my opinion, Beth, she laid the issue out. It's aesthetics versus energy saving. And the board has to decide what's more important, because Ray, you're absolutely right. The ordinance was adopted, nothing in the front, for purely aesthetic reasons only, based on what the panels looked like at the time the ordinance was adopted.
Right. And keep in mind, there's nothing that would stop somebody from putting a New Jersey's devil logo in their roof.
Absolutely.
Nobody else is going to pay for it, so the threat might be a little lower. But
Listen,
as far as control over roofing, we really don't have.
right, that's right. And no one could stop someone in West Orange, New Jersey. A neighbor got pissed off at the zoning officer, so he painted stripes on his entire house.
I read that somebody got fined for letting their grass get too long, and so they just mowed FU into it as a response to that as well. So, sorry.
A guy up in Rockland County got cited for not taking care of his lawn. He removed all the grass and put in rocks.
Ugh. Yeah.
So I think John brought up a good point with regards to, if they can produce something from the manufacturer that says, this is what's keeping the rain out of the house. Okay. The other side of it is the aesthetics part of it, to me, appears to be how far away or how high off of the roof surface this solar panel sits. That tells me that's what makes it aesthetically appealing or unappealing, how far it sits off. So maybe there could be.
And by the way, Gary, that would be my opinion. Right. That would be illegal. That would be okay. Functionality, how many inches off the roof, those are objective, not subjective standards.
Okay. I would also say that if the solar, and I had said this to Beth, I think months ago, if the solar panels are part of the roof system, but there's other pieces because of angles and going around vent pipes and all of that, that they have to be indistinguishable from the solar panels. So they would have to be the same color. Now, totally indistinguishable may not be possible, but I think a lot of these systems would have other pieces that could be used in conjunction with the solar panels, so you could barely tell the difference.
So Ray, if you, let me get my mouse here.
So I think the metal roof is largely indistinguishable.
So what you're interested, I think what you're suggesting is something like what we see here.
Right. Well, I'm sure the ridge line is not a solar panel. I'm sure there's pieces in there in the valleys that are not solar, but they're designed as part of that system and they look compatible. They're consistent.
Right.
Or if you go to the one that was the metal roof.
Yep. This
The
one?
metal roof, it's pretty indistinguishable. I mean, yeah, you could tell if you look closely, but that doesn't jump out at you. Now, the cedar shakes with the black solar panels, that's pretty starkly obvious that, it's not compatible to me.
This one?
No, the cedar shakes, the tan shakes with the dark right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
I mean, now that's just a small view, but I think if you step back from that,
Oh, certainly.
that's going to be very, very distinguishable. Now, if they were black slates with solar, you probably wouldn't be able to see that. But I mean, how to write it is my concern, because we've had some issues with the zoning officer, I guess either we're not clear or not being up to speed with things. And I think we have to be careful that if we do change it, we write it in a way that makes it pretty easy for.
I think that, I think we ought to try to, if that's the direction, I'm comfortable at least taking a stab at an ordinance that, if I go to another picture, let's go back to, something along the lines, and I'll have to finesse this language, so I don't want anybody to get married to it, but something along the lines that where solar is applied to the entirety of this is not the right word, but the eligible roof that is visible from the street, with any portions of the roof that is not eligible for solar, composed of a material and color that is, I don't know if I want to use the word indistinguishable, but indistinguishable, very similar to the solar panel itself. And so that we're basically trying to require this particular situation and not that situation.
Exactly. Now, it may have a limited application today because how many of these are available, but keep in mind that if somebody has something that's close but not quite, they always have the option of coming in for a variance and showing us what they want to do. So this doesn't prevent, this doesn't,
Can you add examples to the ordinance? That's something that.
It would have to be updated.
John, how do I add examples? They don't age well in the code. Can we give a guidance document to the zoning officer? Is that legal?
Yeah, you could give a guidance document to the zoning officer as long as it's not binding on him or her.
Like maybe I can pull some of these pictures and say, yes to this, no to that, yes to this, no to that.
But again, if the picture is showing aesthetics, you're going to be in trouble. If it's showing how many inches off the roof, or if it's showing that it in fact is a functional roof shingle, you're going to be all right.
Okay.
But John, the whole ordinance is based on aesthetics.
No, the ordinance might be, you can't have it on the front. That is the reason behind an ordinance can be aesthetics. But the standard that gets applied has to be an objective and not a subjective standard. So aesthetic, it's okay to zone for aesthetic reasons, but the standard in the ordinance to determine whether something is allowed or not allowed has to be based on objective standards, not subjective standards. Now, if you wanted to say that things it can't be orange, okay, that's objective. You decide.
I don't know, not if you're talking to an interior decorator. There's 70 shades.
Yeah, but the point is, if it can be easily determined by your average person what's allowed and what's not allowed, that will pass, the so-called smell test. If an average person looking at the ordinance wouldn't know if they're permitted or not permitted, that's going to be an invalid ordinance.
Well, I'm kind of comfortable with Beth taking a crack at writing something up, and then we could look at it and decide if it needs to be tweaked or not. But I don't know.
Are we asking her to make it integrated, like replacing shingles, or are we okay with having it lay on top of existing shingles?
I think it needs to function as the roof. I mean, that was always the premise when we started, is it can't be something you put on top of a roof. It has to be the roof. Now, how you want to word that, Beth seems to be comfortable that integrated is the right terminology there because it's part of the building envelope.
You can add something to it, but
he's the professional, so I would go with the recommendation.
I think it's so ambiguous.
You can say, listen, you can say integrated, meaning that it has to function as the roof and keep the weather out.
There
And
you
it
go.
can't be laying on top of the roof. She could
Yeah,
add words
I think
to it.
that's a good point too, John. If you say it can't be installed over top of an existing roofing system.
Yeah. It's fine.
Also, it should be for the whole section of that roof. So that one picture, Beth, with the snow in the front, that was really nice. I don't think it's reasonable for somebody to solar their whole roof. It would be astronomically expensive, but maybe the entire garage section must be uniform. And
Okay, so
could
thank
be,
you, Mark. I wanted to drill down on that and find out if that's the consensus of the board. Do folks want, I think I'm getting that where the solar is, the roof line or the roof portion that the solar is applied to, folks want to see the entirety be the building integrated solar, you know, with the caveats we talked about. But where we have a building with multiple roofs, like I showed with the one in the snow, where you had the second floor, the first floor, and then the extended first floor off to the right of the picture. Are folks comfortable with one or two of those being used as solar, and then the remaining as traditional solar, traditional shingles? Or is this an all or nothing scenario for in terms of solar on visible roofs?
Can we say that the balance of it has to look essentially the same, or is that getting too much aesthetics?
I mean, I think we can say it. I think so. I think I can take a crack at that, and then John will tell me if I've gone too far.
I bet that can figure something out there that would pass muster.
Yeah, it's just it all comes down to, it's the same discussion. It's aesthetics over ease to the homeowner. And if you folks are comfortable that maybe folks need to redo their entire roof, even if they don't do the expensive solar roof to get this done without a variance, maybe they can't get the variance, I can write that ordinance.
Yeah, again, I just keep thinking about what control do we have now? I mean, there's nothing to prevent someone from putting two completely, you know, what we would think were incompatible shingles on
Many people are
different sections of their roof.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to encourage that. That's the thing. So
no, but you know, folks could paint their home pink and their roof blue and God knows what else, and put up a whole bunch of statues in their lawn, unfortunately. So
it's
Paul,
Paul,
you have a couple of situations where people have applied these solar panels to the front of their house. Would this, now granted that it's not retroactive, but would this solve any of those, or are those the old-fashioned traditional?
It's the old-fashioned traditional. With that being said, though, one of them is, in my opinion, very pleasing to the eye, per se. You know, it doesn't look like all the rest, but it doesn't meet the code. But I've been waiting to chime in here. We actually, and I don't know, who are we allowed to discuss who the person is that is talking about putting solar roof on right now? I mean, I don't know who you're referring to, but I know.
Whoa. But if they have a pending application, you shouldn't talk about it, and it's irrelevant.
No, they don't have a pending application. Well, actually, the person that I'm talking about has already been approved for as we're calling it, the integrated solar panels on the rear of their house. But they are actually redoing the entire house with the same solar panels. It's just that the front is not going to be live. It's just going to be coordinated.
Okay, that's an example. If those weren't live and then the ordinance was adopted, they'd be able to make the front live.
They would be able to make the front live, but as of right now, they are doing their entire roof over.
How is it not a variance? I mean, I hate to say this, but how is it not a variance if they apply the solar panels and just don't turn them on?
No. It would be a variance if the solar panels go in the front on top of the roof. I said before, I could interpret your existing ordinance to say, if these roof shingles happen to double as a solar panel, if they're really roof shingles, I could issue an interpretation like that. I don't know if the zoning officer's done that or not, but I got to tell you, Paul, if this guy's putting them on top of that, not turning them on doesn't help him.
No, it's going to be the actual shingle.
It's going to be
the whole thing.
So he's going to rip off the current roof and replace it?
Rip off the current shingles and replace it with solar panels. The front's just not going to be live.
Listen, that's up to the zoning officer.
Well, he's approved it.
Yeah, but if I were the zoning officer, I'm telling you, I could see interpreting the ordinance to not prohibit that if they're actual shingles.
So at the
Right.
end of the day, if they're not hooked up, they're shingles,
Right.
they're not solar panels.
That's it.
As my understanding of the Tesla system, it is that they replace the whole roof. You get that look on the whole roof.
Yeah.
So I guess our
Yeah.
current ordinance doesn't say asphalt shingles. I'm assuming.
It's not asphalt, yeah.
No, I know. I'm saying though, I guess we don't specify that asphalt only. Maybe Mike does?
No, people don't
No,
just have
yeah, no,
asphalt.
because it could be steel, it could be tile, it
It
could
could
be
be metal roof, it could be
Yeah, okay.
clay, it could be stone,
Right.
it could be slate,
Yeah,
it could be rubber.
okay.
Hey, help me here. You're in this industry.
Grass, thatch, out of light. So,
But to get back to your question, Ray, no, this doesn't help anybody who's currently in violation. And it may help somebody who has the potential to go live solar on the front of their house because they're going to already have the solar panels there as integrated shingles.
I mean, my intuition is at some point the right thing to do to open this up a little bit for these systems that don't push our buttons aesthetically, because the solar people are trying to sell these things, and there's a lot of homeowners who, you know, pay taxes here that probably can't really get much benefit from putting them on the rear of their property. The
that's
one
the
I
whole-
saw on Kennedy Mills Road the other day, I was amazed they were putting them on the back because it was all these giant shade trees and they were
Well,
putting them
that's
back
all-
there anyway.
That's the argument that's being made, that there's a lot of houses that aren't friendly to rear roof solar. And
Somebody, Ray, was that you that asked the question, is how would somebody not get a variance if their property is shaded for solar on the front? Was that?
That's a wonderful variance case, absolutely.
Well, because I can tell you how, if folks are wondering, I was just gonna say, I can tell you how that would work. So that person is gonna request a C1 variance. They're gonna argue that they have a hardship because their lot faces a direction that doesn't work for solar, plus they have trees and whatever the case may be. And so that means that they're gonna meet their positive criteria, I think, you know, assuming that the hardship is accurate. So they meet their positive criteria, but as we all know, they then have to go ahead and meet the negative criteria. And I think that's where you're going to be able to distinguish between the various variance cases. So folks may be, so what I would say, if I were a homeowner trying to get solar on the front without this ordinance, they're going to want to argue that it's okay on their property in terms of the negative criteria because they have maybe limited visibility from the street. So maybe it faces the street, but the building is set back far. They have trees, they have other buffering. For some reason, maybe the house itself doesn't really orient towards the street. They'll have to make an argument that the public good has no substantial detriment because of the unique circumstances of their property, perhaps having limited visibility of the
But
solar panels.
the key is, I think what the other thing going on here is they're trying to make it so that people don't have to go through that variance process.
No, I get
it's
that, and I want to be fully supportive of that, but I just want folks to know that it's possible for folks to get a variance for this issue or any deviation from a new ordinance we get, but it is still an upward battle, even though their positive criteria might be relatively easy to meet. If they do indeed have a hardship, that negative criteria is going to remain a burden for them.
with that being said, that's exactly what we've discussed, and here's where we're running into the problem.
Yep.
The variance costs a lot of money.
Yep.
The solar companies are not willing to put it up because the homeowners, for the most part, aren't paying for the solar anyway. It's being subsidized, you know, and then all of a sudden you go to the solar. Well, yeah, you can put it on the front so long as you come and get a variance that it starts at $3,000 and bam, it stops right then and there.
Right.
You know, nobody's brought it to that forward because nobody's putting the $3,000 up front.
Right. That was a comment I was going to make, Paul, is that the cost of doing the variance is certainly a deterrent for
It's
that
prohibited.
situation.
Exactly.
But the other thing is, if we have an ordinance that would allow certain types of systems on the front, then does that also help us avoid those situations where somebody, I mean, then they have an alternative.
That's right. They have an alternative. That's right, Ray.
And so they don't have to use the clunky panels on the front that look horrible. They have an alternative.
Yep.
Possible, sure. I'm getting the feeling though that those architectural tiles are pretty darn pricey though. You know, versus
I bet the more of them that are sold, the price will come down.
no, truth to that.
There'll be more, there'll be competition, the prices will come down, and I wouldn't be surprised if, 5 or 7 years from now, all these solar systems start to look that way.
I mean, if you went on the Tesla website and they've got a calculator for calculating based on the square footage of your house, whatever, what it's going to cost. And yeah, it's more, if you had to replace your roof, it's really not astronomically more than the cost of replacing your roof. Now, if you had a new roof and you had to put this on, then you're talking about a lot of costs. But
interesting.
My recollection was it was a calculation of something like $25,000 versus $18,000 if you had to replace your roof. And that was for the Tesla. And I don't know if their calculator was bull or not, but that's what it came out as.
Well, and it's, the $18,000 roof doesn't generate any electricity. So the incremental cost seems pretty well justified if you really, in that scenario. But the bottom line is the economics aren't our issue. I mean, the homeowners are certainly going to benefit from this. People want to pay them to put this stuff on their roof, but we don't want to be looking at, I mean, I could see in a lot of the neighborhoods with, and people are getting phone calls every day from these solar companies. There's also, I think, some pressure that maybe Paul's feeling that people just want to ignore it because they just want to put these things up and get the benefit. And if we have an option.
Well, unfortunately, it has been ignored. I mean, that won't happen again because the state DCA is more on board. But there has been some solar installed on the front because they sidestepped the process.
Yep. So, I mean, I don't know where everybody is. We've had a lot of really great comments, good discussion. I think Beth said she could write something up that would hopefully capture what we've talked about.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next step. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it for another hour, but I think we're all kind of violently in agreement, really, with what we want to do.
Well, maybe take it, Ray, before Beth spends all that time. Let's take a straw poll. Are we looking at 100% so that it matches, or can it deviate from roof to roof? Like if you're on a 2-story but your garage is lower, right now, me personally, I'd be leaning to the whole thing's got to match the whole thing. But
yeah, because you still have the variance option if you don't want to do that.
Right, exactly. So I mean, that's where I'm leaning. But no sense in having Beth write something up if next month it's not going to see a positive voting thing. So maybe you can do a straw to see.
Well, and just to be clear, I mean, the land use board will vote to present this to the township committee, but the township committee is going to have to enact it. So we're just a step.
Well, exactly. But if you can't get it through the land use board, then it doesn't even go to the TC.
Right.
So I don't want Beth to be spinning her wheels for months because we're not all in agreement right from the word go.
So let me ask the question then. I think I'll phrase it as best I can. How many people would require the entire street-facing roof surface to be covered with the solar system versus having different sections be done differently? So if you want the whole thing to be the same system, raise your hand or hit the button. Hit the button so we can count them. I'm sorry. If you hit the button, then we could see everybody, because if you just raise them, I can't keep track.
I don't think a host can.
So I'm going to raise my hand because I'm host, and Frank raised his hand, and we got 1, 2. So it seems like, and Paul, you said that he got his hand. So it seems like it's pretty much unanimous. Joe, I didn't catch you.
Sorry. Yes, I'm on an audio, and I say yes. Full of,
full roof, right?
Full roof, right.
Beth, it seems like that's kind of the overwhelming thought process. Because if somebody wants to do something other than the full roof, then they they still have the option to come in for a variance at that
Yeah.
point. And
My
that gives us
recommendation would be a
oversight.
certain
That gives us
percentage.
more detailed oversight of what
Right.
they're doing anyway.
Yes,
if that's the
absolutely,
case.
right. If someone wants it different and they're in for a variance, then you could basically, you have so much discretion then with aesthetics, and you can be subjective at that point.
Right.
So that gives Beth the solid point to write now, so she doesn't have to rewrite this a dozen times.
Thanks, guys.
Does anybody else have any other comments or?
My comment was that it should be maybe not 100%, but maybe there could be a percentage of the roof in the event that there are certain manufacturers out there that don't have the ability to do 100% of the roof surface, that it has to be at least 80-85% of the roof surface.
Yeah, I don't know how to get around that because I mean, we've, like in the pictures, I haven't seen anything where somebody has gone around a vent pipe or a chimney or something like that, but I'm sure, I would guess that Tesla probably has parts made specifically for those types of situations, but some of the other manufacturers may not.
Let me make a note to sort of ask the question, do some research. I know Tesla does. I'm almost positive Suntegra does, or maybe they've shown some really positive pictures. But let me just double check, and I'll look around and see if that's a like there were a couple pictures where folks chose not to use the whole roof, and let me try to find out if they didn't use the whole roof because the manufacturer couldn't accommodate it, or if it was just an effort to keep the cost down.
If it's going to look the same, then the roofing company, whether it's Integra or Tesla or whoever, probably makes parts that accommodate different situations like valleys and vent caps and things like that that look the same. So maybe you could say that all of the roofing materials have to come from the same manufacturer. In other words, you're not mixing and matching roofing materials from different manufacturers. That might be an option.
Yeah,
Because that way it doesn't have to be 100% solar panels, like Gary said, but it has to all be parts from the same roofing system.
If you have a house with a couple of dormers, you know, the cost of a special piece of equipment to include the valleys and things that could, you know, be a substantial price difference if you have to include 4 valleys as opposed to just a couple of straight lines. You know, that could change the pricing of somebody's project considerably.
Let Beth figure this out. It could be substantially similar in, you know,
I trust Beth.
Function.
There's one other reason that you might not want to do the whole thing. If you're generating or harvesting more power than you're using, JCP&L, at least a few years ago when I looked at this, JCP&L won't pay you. All you could do is negate it down to 0. So you would size your roof to meet your need, which might not be the whole roof.
But then you have to buy a Tesla, so you're using more power. That's easy. Problem solved. Do you want the Roadster or the Model S?
You get the battery wall so you can store it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but you know, Joe's right. I mean, a certain size from because you only get the whatever they call those rebates and stuff up to a certain level based on your consumption. So, ECRIC, yeah, and those laws are all going to change anyway. I mean, they keep renewing that thing, and who knows what's going to happen. But for now,
I wasn't even referring to those credits. It's just the netting that happens at your meter. It won't go negative. They won't let it go negative.
So how are you guys going to give? I think Beth gets the general sense. You guys going to just tell her to draft it and send it back to you guys so you can then see what it looks like?
I think we should. I guess we can make a motion since it's a conversation to have Beth draft. She already drafted one to modify the draft based on this conversation and present it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll provide it in advance of the August meeting.
Right.
Yeah, if you could get it to us, ahead of time, even better.
Great.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. All right, Mark, you can have it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Beth, you know what you got to do?
I got it.
All right. I wish I had a beer in my hand. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Is there anything else that anybody has before we adjourn? All right.
You can go for that motion without the beer.
Did you want to, we have one public, I don't know if you wanted to open it to the public.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Why don't we unmute Bill and Doris and see if they have any comments?
They are unmuted. Bill and Doris.
Good evening. I'm a little bit concerned that what you're trying to do is a good thing. A question in my mind is if you come up with a revised statute, is it going to solve any real problems? Is it going to materially, globally alleviate the expense of people getting variances, or is it going to just create confusion and ambiguity? I guess I'm asking is the flame worth the candle?
Well, we would hope that it wouldn't be ambiguous and create confusion, and that's all, of course, the devil's in the details of how we write it. It could benefit a lot of residents that would not have to apply for variances if they wanted to put solar on the front face of their house.
Do we know how many people are actually out there, numbers, wanting to do this?
I do not. I know we have several that have inquired.
I mean,
Paul B might
traditional
know.
stuff. It's traditional, but it's a lot of people are wanting it on the front of their house. So they may look at this as an alternative.
I understand. Thank you.
Any more questions or comments, Bill?
No, thank you.
All right. Thanks for chiming in. Sorry, we almost forgot about you.
That's okay.
All right, Bill. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Then I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Wow. Everybody's competing for that one. Okay, Joe, got it. Anybody second?
Mark.
Second.
Thanks, Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. I guess we'll see everybody next month.
See you next month, all.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey,
Take care, everybody.
all right.
Thanks for running everything there, Frank.
Oh, you're welcome. Ending the meeting now. Everybody take care.
Take care.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks.